vulnerability-based trust or vulnerability-based leadership is really about, hey, listen, you need to be competent. You need to stay up on emerging trends. You need to be reading. You need to be constantly investing in yourself to learn and grow, but also you need to be investing, I think, in our team to learn and grow as well. Or maybe I should say grow and learn. And so when we do that, it's recognizing with authenticity, hey, I have a certain role in the company. That organization or that company doesn't mean I have to have all the answers. I just need to commit to an answer moving forward. And so, there's, I think, Zorina, where some of the confusion around being a vulnerable leader comes in is it's not just a matter of being vulnerable, where you come in and say, I don't know how to do this. That might be a competency issue. It's a matter of saying, hey, I don't have the answer, but I'm committed to figuring this out, and I need us as a team to figure this out together.
Hi, I'm Zorina, and welcome to the Grownlearn Podcast. Beyond these conversations, I actively connect investors with high growth opportunities. Right now, I'm working on projects seeking strategic partners. If you're an investor, PE firm, or family office looking for scalable ventures, let's talk. Book a call at grownlearn.org to explore these opportunities. I'm sipping my coffee on a Friday afternoon with Brian Brault. He's been my guest before on the Grownlearn podcast. And I assume this video will also be published on Heal and Learn because the topics he has to talk about refer not only to business growth, but also to relationships, to personal growth. He is a global leader of the Entrepreneurs Organization and the creator of the Legacy of Significance leadership programs. More importantly than this, he's a very successful entrepreneur himself. He's built a company in millions and 300 plus employees without a sales force. This is indeed impressive. Last time we spoke specifically about this aspect of relationship driven growth in business. Today, I guess we're going to touch on this, but he's inspired to talk about authentic leadership in our private lives, but also in business. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Thank you, Zorina. I love speaking with you. You always have such insightful questions. You get me thinking, and so I really enjoy our time together.
Likewise, Brian. Thanks for joining me again. Yeah, we had one mishap in recording, but here we are again. Thank you very much. So you've been, let's say, I do want to touch on your personal relationships because we started this chat today before recording by you telling me about your grandpa days or papa days. I can't remember what you call them, where you take your grandchild to or one of your grandchildren and you dedicate a day to them. How is this important in their development?
Well, they're called Papa Days.
Papa Days.
And that's because that's what my grandchildren call me, is Papa. And I started it a number of years ago because I realized that what was truly important to me, I wasn't building enough time into my calendar. And so I was allowing the other noisy distractions in my life to dictate my calendar, and I needed to take control of that and prioritize my priorities. And my family is far and away the most important part of my life. And so I started to build into my calendar very specific time with each and every child and their spouse, and then my grandchildren. And so I have these Papa Days. And so I dedicate one day each year solely for spending one-on-one time with my children, their spouse, or my grandchildren. So what happens is when it's their day, they get to decide where we go to breakfast, what time we go to breakfast, what we do between breakfast and lunch, where we go to lunch, and then what we do between lunch and dinner, and where we go to dinner. And then once dinner's done, the day's done, but they get to decide everything that we do. And my one grandson recently decided that he really, really wanted to go to Washington, D.C. Now, these Papa Days don't usually involve getting on a plane. It's usually something local, and I pick them up and we start our day and we have a wonderful time. But gosh, I was able to use some air miles and get in and out in a day. So I thought, what the heck, let's give it a shot. So I slept at my daughter's family's home. One night we got up very early in the morning, hopped on a plane to Washington, D.C., and then flew back that night. And this was just this past Wednesday. And it was spectacular, Zorina. We had, he's 11 years old. He's studying U.S. history in school right now. So he really wanted to see the National Archives, which is where the Declaration of Independence is housed. And he wanted to see and learn about that, as well as the Constitution. We went to the Natural Museum of History, and he wanted to see the gems and the minerals. And then we went to the Air and Space Museum in Smithsonian, went to Lincoln Memorial. But what was really fun is it was raining that day. And so we rented these scooters for the day practically. And we just were on scooters going all over the mall in Washington, D.C., up to the Capitol, to the Library of Congress, and just had a ball together. And it was really, really good one-on-one time. So you asked the question, why is this important? I want my children and my grandchildren to know that they're the most important part of my life. And so dedicating a time to them where they get to choose everything creates memories and it creates a bond. And the only reason I really bring out my phone is to take pictures and videos. And then at the end of the day, I put that all together in an iMovie. I upload it to YouTube so that their parents and they and I get to have a lifelong memory of that day that we spend together. And it tells them that they're important to me because they are. And so I want to follow that up with actions.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to special days like Mother's Day, Father's Day, people always say, yeah, I mean, it's a one day of celebration, but what do you do the rest of the time? So what is your philosophy on your day-to-day relationship to your spouse and children?
Yeah. So I travel a decent amount. If I'm traveling internationally, my wife usually travels with me. If it's short 1-2 day domestic trips, then I'll be on my own. But my wife is the last person I talk to before I go to sleep, and she's usually the first person I talk to in the morning. I have a morning routine that I go through each morning for the first 30 minutes, but then when that's done, I'm usually reaching out to her, checking to see. We kind of have an agreement that we'll text each other when we're awake in the morning so that we know. And then we usually have a phone call. I like to hear her voice to start my day and to end my day. And my children, I just like to make sure they're adults now. So my children right now are 36 and a half, I guess, almost 34. And then my youngest is 31, and they all have children. And I try to stay in touch with them at least a couple times a week. Just touch base, tell them I'm thinking about them. Very often, if I'm on a plane, I may shoot them a text just to tell them that I'm proud of them, because I am. And I'm usually pretty specific. So it's each individual messages about what is it about them that I'm proud of? What is it I admire about the way they live, the way they're show up in their careers, in their relationships, and as parents. Just because, I don't want to have something ever happen and me have things inside me that I would want them to know.
Brian, were you always like this, or did you get kind of educated on this way of dealing with relationships? Because your wife of 30 years now, you have a successful marriage of 30 years. Your wife is a psychologist and you do very exclusive retreats together. When did you start realizing the importance of relationships in your life and kind of got the hang of it?
I wish I could say it was a magic moment. And we've been married actually 37 and a half years
Oh,
now.
wow.
So we've been married a long time. And she is a certified relationship coach. The I think when I realized this was when my oldest daughter got married. I was just, when she got married, I wasn't quite 50 yet. And, we always hear when your kids are young, hey, enjoy them while they're young because it goes by so fast. And I realized that that was true. And, when you hear it, when your kids are young or we are young, we kind of feel like we're going to live forever and these times are going to last forever. And then all of a sudden, I was building businesses and scaling them and, was always pretty present as a father. But, I was always building businesses while I was with them. And so I realized as I look back that I was reminded of a time, and I'm glad you're asking me this question because I was reminded of a time actually when my youngest daughter was 5 years old. I had taken her to get an ice cream one Saturday morning. And after we got the ice cream, we were walking in this park next door, and she looked up at me and said, Daddy, I miss you. And I looked down and I said, Sarah, why do you say that? And she said, because I don't see you anymore. And I just kind of we kept walking, and I started to think about it, and um, I realized that I was trying to think of the last time she and I had done something one-on-one together, and I realized it had been like 6 months, and that felt like a long time. But then I quick did the math and realized at 5 years old, I had just let 10% of my daughter's life go by without doing anything one-on-one with her. And it really hit me hard. I wanted to stay present with her, so we kept walking and talking. But later that day, Zorina, it really hit me hard that I had been building another business. My business was based in the Northeast, and I was building an expansion of that business down in the Southeast part of the United States. And I'd been traveling a lot. And so even when I was in town, I would often work late. Or even if I was home, I would be answering emails or being on my phone or text or something. And I realized that I tell the whole world that my family is the most important part of my life, but my 5-year-old daughter, he basically just told me she didn't feel that. And it was a very emotional moment for me. And I realized I need to change something in my life. And so I started to prioritize them at that time. I started doing these things called $50 days. And it was kind of similar to what Papa Days are today, but I used to give them a budget of $50. Now, again, this is 25 years ago. So I started giving them a budget of $50, and we would spend the day together. And when the $50 was up, the day was done. And so what it did is it gave us one-on-one time together, but it also kind of taught them budgeting a little bit. So if they wanted to spend $50 in the first hour, great, our day was done at that point. But what they did is they started to get very careful about where they would spend the money, because if we went to lunch somewhere, my meal was included in that budget. And so I found very quickly my kids were pretty thrifty. And so I was allowed to get a glass of water and split their French fries with them because they didn't want my lunch to eat into their $50 day. But we had wonderful times, and that was kind of the start of it. Now that you're asking me, and then quite honestly, I got caught up in life again, and the marriage of my first daughter was a reminder that she's not a little girl anymore, and that life does indeed go by fast. And I still had plenty of years ahead of me, and I wanted to make the most of it.
Mm.
So I'm sorry for such a long answer, but you got me thinking. Like I said, you always ask such insightful questions that get me thinking that you sent me down a path, memory lane.
And that's exactly what I want to experience with my guests as well. It's
Yeah,
an experience of getting out something that is also useful for the audience, but also, it's never useful unless it's useful for you as well. So
well, great.
I'm happy for that. Um, I do want to talk a little bit about the retreats and what you create with your wife, the kind of experience, and then maybe we can move on the business side and how relationships are important to business.
Sure.
But since we started on a personal note, and every person who is building a business knows that without a proper relationship, you're basically dragged down. A bad relationship can drag your business down, and vice versa. It can lift it up. So when you do your retreats, let's talk a little bit about the retreats.
Sure.
What do they look like? Who goes on these retreats?
Yeah, great question. So when it comes to the couples retreats,
Yeah.
they range in anywhere from like a long weekend to our week-long retreats. And so I think what we were talking about earlier is the week-long retreats, which we do once or twice a year. And we have started moving them around the world. And so this coming late September, our retreat is in the south of France. And so my wife, Jean, and I just were in the south of France a couple of weeks ago doing site visits to, we want to make sure it's an incredible investment in your relationship to help take your relationship to the next level, but also to make sure it's just an exquisite experience in the world. And so we went and toured the resort that we will be at, which is in Mougins, France, which is where Picasso spent a good portion of his adult life, his professional life, and it's also near Cannes and near Nice, and just a beautiful part of the world. And so we'll experience that. We'll experience some of the Michelin restaurants that are there. We'll experience down home French cooking. We'll experience the beauty of the south of France in all its glory, as well as the French Riviera. We have a Michelin chef that's going to give us a cooking class in a chateau north of Nice, and just wonderful experiences. And then the opportunity to just kind of go for walks in a small old towns within the south of France. But each day we spend about 3 to 4 hours on content that is focused on who are you as an individual, who are you as a couple, how to communicate effectively. So in other words, how to listen to understand versus listen to fix or listen to reply. Most human beings listen to fix or reply in some way because it's kind of what we do all day, every day, is figure out problems and take care of situations and figure things out. So we're listening differently. But when we're in relationships, which every human being is in relationships, so often people just need us to understand. They don't need us to fix. They don't need us to reply. They just need us to understand. So learning how to listen to understand is a big part of what we do. And learn how to communicate impactfully. But also, as human beings, Zorina, we're going to have conflict. And one thing that really jumped out at me was one time my wife said, you really need to have conflict in a healthy relationship. And I said, I'm not sure I'm buying that. And she said, well, let's just talk for a second. When you and I have an argument, what is it that you're really, really looking for from me? And we went back and forth for quite a while. And finally I said, I guess I just want you to understand me and my perspective. And she said, okay. And what is it that you think I want, meaning her? And that was a much shorter conversation at that point. I said, you probably want me to understand you as well. She said, okay, so if we can navigate conflict, on the other side of that conflict is you understand me better and I understand you better. And one of the definitions of intimacy is into me you see. And she said, so healthy conflict actually leads to intimacy. And not necessarily sexual intimacy, but the intimacy of intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy, emotional intimacy. And really, that is the core of really connection. And so that started us on this journey of understanding that a lot of the same concepts around building high-performing teams in the workplace are the same concepts of building an impactful romantic relationship. And it got me thinking that really a marriage or a romantic relationship is just a high-performing team of two, or hopefully it's high-performing. And so we started to look at the correlation between human dynamics in a work environment or in an organization and the dynamics of a romantic relationship, and realize that they're very, very similar.
Mhm.
And so that's what we focus on our retreats, is helping people to build those connections, and also to understand that so often, Zarina, the 80-20 rule applies to marriages as well, or romantic relationships. And that is that so often in life we tend to zero in on the 20% of a relationship, whether that's a friendship or a marriage or a work relationship. We focus on the 20% that bothers us about someone. And yet, if we focus on the 80% that is amazing, or why we want to be in that relationship, um, we're actually really, really lucky. I mean, if we're in a relationship with someone who loves us, that we love, that we enjoy spending time with, that helps make us a better person, we're really blessed, because a lot of the world doesn't have that. And so, focusing on that and helping people to focus on their journey and what got them to where they are today, can be really powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, indeed, very insightful about the 80-20. And I got a question now about the conflict part, because just like you, I was like, really? Conflict
Yeah,
is really necessary?
yeah,
Um, so when it got me thinking while you were speaking, um, is it really necessary that a conflict arises, or that we stimulate a conflict also at a work environment, but any environment, in any
mhm,
relationship? Or could it be that we just open up the conversation for what you call authentic communication, authentic leadership? So we open up the stage where people can express themselves. Is it necessary that we actually experience the trigger, which is a conflict?
yeah. So I guess it really depends on how we define conflict. And so, really, conflict to me is a matter of, uh, well, I believe that leaders in general need to make sure the people they're leading can answer these three questions. And the first one is, where are we going? The second one is, what do we need to do to get there? And third is, what is my role? And so, where are we going is a very clearly articulated vision of what success looks like. And the second part of that is, what do we need to do to get there? In other words, what strategy do we need to put in place to achieve that vision? And then the third part is, what is my individual role, from the leader of the organization to the person who just got hired on the front line yesterday? What is my role in executing on that strategy to reach that vision? And so, I believe personally, my approach is that part about, what do we need to do? What is the strategy we need to put in place in order to achieve that vision? Is a broader team of people coming together and figuring out the strategy that we need to put in place to achieve that vision. And when that happens, I would hope that we would have a lot of different perspectives on what our priorities are, what we need to do, what changes we need to make in the organization in order to be able to, achieve success. And conflict is the ability to have everyone have a voice, so that, you and I are discussing how we want to achieve, what strategy we need to put in place to achieve a certain outcome. I want you to have your perspective. So if I step in and say, hey, Zarina, I think this is what we need to do, you need to be able to say, you know what, Brian, I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't know that I agree. I think, given these circumstances, we need to take this approach. And we kind of go back and forth, and we may get a little heated at times, because we believe in what we believe, and we believe in our experiences and the value of our perspective. And so we may get into a little bit of conflict around what is the best approach to take and how do we deal with this. This is how I feel about this. And so, in a work environment, making sure that you feel that you've contributed to what our decisions are is important for a healthy team. If every time we go into a situation, I'm the one who makes the decisions and it's my way or the highway, there's going to come a point where you're going to start to become disengaged because you don't feel valued, you don't feel seen or heard. And so, the same applies in a relationship. When you're talking about anything from, where to go to dinner to, how you feel, how you feel about decisions as it relates to our extended families, your family, my family. Where are we prioritizing where we're going to spend the holidays? Everything from raising children to where are we going on vacation this year? What's important to us about those decisions to our sex life? I mean, there's all different things that, you know, two people are going to have different perspectives on. And it's important that each person in that relationship feels like they have a voice, that they feel seen, they feel valued, they feel loved, they feel heard. And so conflict is just the fact that we're two different people with different perspectives and different wants or needs in the moment. Maybe we're feeling a little bit different about our lives in that moment. Maybe we had one of us had a great day at work. Maybe one of us had a challenging day. Maybe one of us slept better the night before. Maybe one of us didn't get a whole lot of sleep. Some interaction we had that just turned us a little bit. When we come together as human beings, feeling like I can challenge my wife on a situation or a decision without the thought that if I challenge her, she's going to leave me, I think is really important. I don't know if that kind of gave clarity or
it was a
context.
very well-rounded answer to my question. It painted a whole new picture of a conflict being the expression of perspectives, of points of view. So yeah, I think that's a great perspective. So okay, when we talk about vulnerability and in leadership and leadership authenticity, I mean, these have become buzzwords. Is there anything really authentic behind it, or is it just marketing when we talk about authentic leadership? What's the essence and the non-marketing part of authentic leadership?
Yeah, well, it's I hope it's becoming buzzwords, and I hope it's becoming popular because there's maybe an awakening of what's truly important and what the world needs now in leadership. And so, I think I shared this story once before, so I'll be very brief with it. It was in 2010, one of my companies was identified by Hyatt Hotels as a brand standard, which means that in the Americas was their test market. Every hotel, every Hyatt hotel in the Americas, Canada, the US, and Latin America, Caribbean, was required to have our program. We grew by leaps and bounds. It was a fun time and a very busy, very focused time for us. In 2013, they had a change in the highest level of leadership at Hyatt, and they made a decision to move our program from a brand standard, which means it's required, to a brand recommendation, which means we like your program, but our hotels aren't required to have it. We knew that we were going to probably lose about 30% of the hotels we had with them. And so we were scared. I called our whole team together and from around the country. And it was a week later we had the meeting. And Zorina, that week I prayed that I would have the right words to say when that meeting started. And that meeting came, and I felt like I had been failed with the right words, because the meeting started and I was looking down for what felt like 10 minutes. It was probably 10 seconds. And I looked up and around the room and I said, hey, listen, we all know why we're here. And I wish I had the answer, but I don't. And in that moment, Zorina, I felt like a failure as a leader, because their eyes got really big and they looked at me. And I said, but what I'm pretty sure of is that the answer's in this room. We just need to have that conversation. And their eyes got really big. And then a few seconds later, someone said, well, what if we tried this? And then someone responded to that and said, yeah, or we could do this. And 2 hours later, we had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but we had a plan. And I just thought, I'm so glad they stepped up, because I feel like I failed as a leader because I didn't have the direction they needed. And so everyone was filing out, and this one woman from Houston stayed back, and she kind of came up to me at the end of the meeting and said, thank you for this. And I said, why are you thanking me? She said, because I've never seen you be as strong of a leader as you were today. And I felt the exact opposite. And I said, wow, why do you say that? She said, because you were comfortable enough to admit that you didn't have the answer, but you empowered us to be involved in figuring this out. And I think we've got a really good plan. And for me, it was that moment that I realized I don't have to have all the answers. I just need to create an environment where I surround myself with really good people. I invest in them. I help mentor and nurture them if that's appropriate. And I empower them to step up and contribute to a better result because I didn't have the answer. And so if I had to be the one to figure it out, we would have been in trouble.
Mhm.
And so it's about, if I have to put on a face and say, hey, I've got all the answers, follow me, that's not being authentic. And
Mhm.
so vulnerability-based trust or vulnerability-based leadership is really about, hey, listen, you need to be competent. You need to stay up on emerging trends. You need to be reading. You need to be constantly investing in yourself to learn and grow. But also you need to be investing, I think, in our team to learn and grow as well. Or maybe I should say grow and learn. Um, but the uh, and so when we do that, it's recognizing with authenticity, hey, I have a certain role in the company. That organization or that company doesn't mean I have to have all the answers. I just need to commit to an answer moving forward. And so, I think, Zorina, where some of the confusion around being a vulnerable leader comes in is it's not just a matter of being vulnerable, where you come in and say, I don't know how to do this, or geez, I'm really unsure. I don't know what to do. I screwed up here. That might be a competency issue.
Mhm.
It's a matter of saying, hey, I'm overwhelmed, but and I need your help because we need to move forward, or I don't have the answer, but I'm committed to figuring this out, and I need us as a team to figure this out together. So it's taking vulnerability, let's say, or authenticity,
Mhm.
but committing to a path forward, committing to success, committing to figuring it out.
Mhm.
Because what we want to be able to do with our teams is say, hey, I am who I am. I'm not perfect, but we as a team will figure this out and become successful together. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but
Yeah, total sense. Most people, at least on the first glance, it seems perceive authenticity as almost humiliating yourself or putting personal information or personal stories out there, showing your imperfections. But, you explained it quite well and succinct, I must say.
okay,
Thank
good.
you. Thank you for that.
I don't know that I've ever been accused of being succinct, but I'll take it.
I think a story paints a thousand. No, it's about a picture. A picture paints a thousand words, but a story
Yes,
paints a thousand other,
pictures. Yeah, great.
yeah, pictures, I guess.
I guess I don't know. So it was maybe
I,
you're
I,
starting a new quote.
exactly. I have to start a new quote. uh, do you consult business leaders at the moment, or
Uh,
do you just do the? What do you do at the moment? Do you run your company still?
yeah.
Yeah, where
So
are you engaged in? Hmm.
so the traditional businesses that I've had, I've built and I've sold those businesses. But about 6 years ago now, we started an organization called Legacy of Significance. And really, what we do is we help develop leaders across all dimensions of their lives. So there's the business world where we create executive education programs, leadership development. We have a virtual manager development program for companies that really don't have training for their managers. But we also do some coaching. We coach leadership teams, and really where I believe we excel is helping to create high performing teams where again, the team and the organization can answer, where are we going? What do we need to do to get there? And what is my role? So we work with that. But also, as we've been discussing, leadership applies in other parts of our life as well. So evolving as a leader in business or in organization and teams, yet not applying those things in our marriages or in our families doesn't help us. And so we help people understand how to take their awareness in certain parts of their life and apply it in other parts of their life as well. So that's where the family retreats and the couples retreats come into play. And then the last part is, very often we are asked to step up in the community, to maybe be on non-for-profits or boards, or be involved in making the world a better place somehow. And when we do that, Zorina, very often we as leaders are asked to lead other leaders. And that is a very different dynamic, because in our organizations, many leaders exercise what's called positional authority. And positional authority, you have a title, you either own a company, you're the lead person in that organization, whether it's a company or a division of a company or a non-for-profit organization. And you have a title. And so you can tell people what to do and give directives. When you are leading other strong leaders, one is you don't really have positional authority, because they're usually volunteering to be in that role. But these people also, you don't have the ability to tell them what to do, or they're not going to respond very well to it. And so what's really important is to shift from positional authority to relational authority. And relational authority is leading with influence or leading through collaboration. And so that's an important part of what we help leaders do, is understand how to shift from positional authority to being great at leading leaders with influence, with collaboration, with empowering, seeing the value and leadership abilities in others, and really empowering them to be part of a better answer and better success. Now, I play a few different roles. I'm one of the leaders of an executive education program that is between, it's housed at an MIT retreat campus in Boston every year. I also, one of the major roles I play is I travel around the world helping to develop entrepreneurial leaders in their lives and in their journey. And so I travel quite a bit for that.
What do you mean by entrepreneurial leaders? Are these leaders of startup companies, scale-up companies, not large organizations, or do you mean entrepreneurial leaders in any sort of organization?
Really, it's primarily people who are owners or founders of their businesses. And these are entrepreneurs who have anywhere a minimum of $1 million in annual revenue, US dollars in annual revenue. But yet it scales up to companies that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenues. And it's everywhere in between. It's members of the Entrepreneurs Organization from around the world. There's over 20,000 members. And so some of the things that I do are either helping to prepare people who are stepping into leadership in their local chapters, or people who are stepping into the regional and global leadership roles, or people beyond their entrepreneurial world, and stepping into roles of leading change in the world, leading ways that they connect with serving their communities. And one of the things that has come out of that is bringing entrepreneurs from around the world together at the United Nations to address the way entrepreneurs address business or life, applying that to the way the world solves its problems. So that's been quite a fun journey as well.
That's quite interesting. Mm-hmm. So, Brian, before I let you go and ask you my last question, it's the one but last, how can people get a hold of you, find out more about the upcoming retreat, and possibly about the trainings that you do with Legacy of Significance?
Yeah. So our website is legacyofsignificance.com. That's probably the easiest way. People can also connect with me on LinkedIn, which we can maybe share in the notes. But they can connect with me on LinkedIn, or they can just reach out to me at And my email is Brian, Brian, at life, Life, hyphen, bydesign.com. So life by design, but there's a dash between life and by design, is the best way to reach me as well. So yeah, and on our website is all our different programming and options. We also have a life coach that helps people figure out what's important to them in life and how to design their life to achieve happiness. So there's lots of stuff that we just love to invest in people and in their lives and help them develop as leaders across all dimensions of their life.
Fantastic. My last question is probably going to surprise you, but to get to know you a little bit, what are you doing this weekend?
This weekend, wow, okay. So two things. One is it's a weekend that I have with my wife. My dad turns 88 on Saturday, so I'm going to spend some time with my dad. He's a pretty spectacular human. Very often people get asked, if you had a panel of three people that you needed to make the most significant decisions in your life. Still, I'm 61 years old. My dad is the very first person that is on that list all the time. He is a pretty incredible leader. He's an incredible father, grandfather, great-grandfather, husband, and friend. So he's just so he turns 88 on Saturday. So I'll spend some time with him. Also, we are looking at merging with another pretty significant leadership development organization, and there's a project we're collaborating on, and I've got to invest some time in that. But then, quite honestly, Zorina, I'm going to take advantage of being home with my wife and really just enjoying time with her this weekend. So I'm gonna relax a little bit for the first time in a while. I'll probably end up doing some yard work and gardening and planting flowers as well.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you so much for this insightful conversation. Not only insightful, but also heartfelt. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.